the shir, of course, in memory of Avram ben Mirtzi Rachalea. And as I was saying before the video kicked in just now, Bezrat Hashem, I sent an invitation this morning on Facebook for those of you on Facebook. Otherwise, I'll send a direct invitation June 8th, Wednesday, right after Shavuot. Be the book launch for the English book called The Three Images. Have nothing to do with Piyutim. And also the second volume Piyutim. A little bit we'll talk about that, but mostly focus on the English. It's going to be right here by Annette Uri. So don't have too far to go. Okay, now I can pin. Very good. Just a second. Okay. Okay, Tov. We are on page, in the small version, page 80. And in everyone else's, wherever you are, it's on this paragraph that starts with the words Yetera aleha chamdat hakavod. More than the need or desire for many people for money is their desire for honor. Now, there's a difference between respect and honor. Everyone wants to be respected. There's no, you don't want to be, as they say, dissed. You don't be disrespected, right? But honor is a little bit, is a different category. There are many different results of people seeking honor. I actually saw a great line this morning. It didn't have an answer. That was a great question. Someone asked, I was doing a little bit of background research on the topic of kavod. Now, it says in Pirkei Avot, Kol haboreach mina kavod, whoever runs away from honor, the honor will chase after him, and he'll be honored. So someone wrote a great question, said, I don't understand. If kavod is a bad thing, just a second, let me do something here. If kavod is a bad thing, why do I want to be rewarded with kavod? Right? Okay, so right now we'll leave that hanging. We'll see if we can come up with some kind of answer. I don't know. We might finish the chapter today. We'll see. I think this is like the 15th class on this chapter. And by the way, this has been until here. This is the easy part of Mesilat Yesharim. I don't want to give you, make you feel bad. Don't, because from after chapter 13, the 12 was very teeny, but after chapter 13, you got to buckle up. Yeah, so we'll see why, it gives it like a feeling almost like, well, I can't even do this. How am I supposed to do that? Don't worry about it. We're going to get to that. Daya l'tzar b'shata. We'll worry about it then. Okay, you got it? It starts Yetera leha chamdat hakavod. Yes? Yes? Okay, good. So in addition to the issue of seeking out and trying to do anything you can to acquire money in any way, shape, or form possible because you feel you deserve it, and you feel you know better than God because you deserve what is not yours. Again, parenthetically, there's nothing wrong with wanting to earn money. There's nothing wrong with wanting to make a parnasa, obviously, and there's nothing wrong with wanting to make more. Otherwise, why would you ever ask your boss for a raise? Why would you ever do more work than you had to? Like, if I could live on 1 shekel a year, like Nir Barkat, that's what he gets, right? He only wants 1 shekel a year, and he has 2 million something shekel in reserve waiting for him to take, and he's refusing to take it. If I could live on 1 shekel a year like Nir Barkat, why would I want to make more than 1 shekel, right? So the answer is no, it's not the case. You don't have to force yourself to get by in the bare minimum, but you do have to put yourself in a situation. You don't put yourself in a situation where all you're thinking about is money and running after money constantly. More than that, though, and you would think if you put it you ask most people, what do you think there's a more desire for, lust after, money or kavod, honor? Most people would say money. He says it's honor. And we'll see that money corrupts. We know that. But honor destroys. Let's see what he says. He's going to give us some examples. It's possible certain people can overcome their desire, their extreme desire for money. Again, there's a big difference between eating and being a glutton. We've seen this before. Being ra'ev, being hungry, or being ra'avtan, being a glutton. There's a big difference. Same thing here. There's a big difference between wanting to do better and make more money, but not that, but that's the entire focus of your life. It's possible to overcome it. But when it comes to honor, that's kind of like, that's pushing. That's really always at your door. Because a person does not want to see themselves on a lower station than their friend. And many have tripped up on this and have been destroyed. I'm going to give you I'm glad he brings this example because he needs my haskama, my approval for his book, the Ramchal, because I'm sure he was waiting 300 plus years for that. So, Baruch Hashem. But of all the examples one could give, how honor destroys, or the need to be the most honored person in the room, is the case of Yeravam ben Nevat. So a little background first. Yeravam ben Nevat was one of the kings of Israel, the northern kingdom. If you remember, in Sefer Melachim, early on, the Jews do not get along with each other. For a very short time, we have the Beit HaMikdash with only one king in the whole country, Shlomo HaMelech. And then already next generation, there's a split in the kingdom. We know that there's the northern kingdom, and there's the area of Yehuda, which is basically the greater Jerusalem area. And they each had their own king. Some of the kings were wonderful, some of them were terrible, and some were actually horrific. And one of the worst in the northern kingdom was Yeravam ben Nevat. What did he do? He's the one that really started off the whole ball rolling up north for idol worshiping. And not only that, to purposely, for more political reasons, to keep people from going to Yerushalayim. Because if people go to Yerushalayim, there's a Beit HaMikdash, and that's obviously more important than what he did up north. And what he did up north was right over around here in Beit El, and then further up north in Dan, he put, we don't learn from our mistakes, he built an Egel HaZahav, a golden calf, and he put each one in each one of those areas, and said, you don't need to go down to Jerusalem, you got all what you need up here, up north. Not only is he known as a chote, a sinner, but almost every single time his name is mentioned after that incident, almost every single time in Tanakh his name comes up, he's called the Choteu Machatiyat Rabim. He is a sinner and one who caused others to sin. It's bad enough that you did something bad, but when you're responsible for other people's averot, especially when it comes to Avodah Zarah, that hangs on that individual. So listen to this story. What Yeravam ben Nevat was given an unbelievable opportunity after he died. Hashem wanted him to do tshuva. As horrible as he wanted him to do tshuva, and he says, I'll tell you what, look at the next line. There's a Gemara in Sanhedrin. Hashem grabbed him by the collar, so to speak, as he's entering Olam Haba. And he said to him, Chazor b'cha, do tshuva. Even now, do tshuva. Maybe it's before he died. I don't know. Because you can't really do tshuva after you die. He says to him, do tshuva. Vani v'ata, and then I and you, uven Yishai, meaning David, nitayel began Eden. You know what we're going to do? You're going to spend the rest of eternity in Gan Eden with me and David. This is what we would say, Chaim Shel Tutim, right? Doesn't translate into English, a life of strawberries, right? It means a good life. What does he answer? Amarlo. So Yeravam ben Nevat said to God, Mi barosh, who's going to walk first into Gan Eden? Me or Ben David? Or David HaMelech? Amarlo ben Yishai barosh. Obviously, David HaMelech is going first. Amarlo ihachi lo ba'ina. If that's the case, I don't want it. You realize what he just did? He literally threw away his reward of Gan Eden because of kavod. Just like we saw that anger makes a person do insane things and they go out of their mind, he's telling us kavod does the same thing. What led Korach literally down the very bad path, right? It was kavod. It says it very clearly. They also want to be the big cheese. We forget Korach was a Levi. He's already the Shevet that's working Beit Mishkan and then Beit HaMikdash. No, he needs more. Again, there's nothing wrong with wanting to improve yourself, but this was basically challenging Moshe and Aaron. Who made you the big cheese? We want to be the big cheese. He says that the real underlying reason as to why Korach was so upset was he saw that Elitzaphan ben Uziel was made the prince of Shevet Levi, and he himself wanted to be the Nasi in his place. Now, before we read the next example, a little background. We know that we are paying till this very day for a tragedy and terrible sin of a handful of people. Not a handful, a lot of people. And that's the Chet HaMeraglim. We know that Moshe Rabbeinu, Parashat Shalach, we're coming to it fairly soon, sends 12 people into the land of Israel, actually to Canaan, to check out the land and see what's going on there. And the story, as you know, plays out a little differently in that where it's mentioned in Parashat Shalach, and then in Sefer Devarim, the repetition of the story is slightly different. Fine. They come back. We know that there's 10 who give a very bad report, 2 who give a very good report. And the question is, you're talking about Gedolei Yisrael. We're not talking about, some average Yosela walking down the street. Talk about the Gedolei Yisrael. These are leaders, the princes of the tribes. What caused them to sin so greatly that not only did they speak Lashon Hara about Am Yisrael, they caused panic among the Jews, and the Jews said, we can't do this. We're going to all die there. It's a land that eats its inhabitants. And of course, we know that Kaleb ben Yefunah stands up and says the beautiful words, Alo na'aleh v'yarashnu ota ki yacholnu chala. Let us go up. We can do this. Some say he's saying that we, meaning you and Hashem, we together can do this. And they all start crying. But they all start crying, and Hashem says to them, Atem bechitem bechiyah shel chinam. You cried for nothing, and I'm establishing a crying for you for generations, and we know that night was Tisha B'Av. But what caused them to sin? How in the world could they not come back? It's terrible enough when tourists come to Israel, or Israelis themselves. We ourselves sometimes do this. But when tourists come to Israel and they go back home, no, how was your trip? Well, it was great to be at the Kotel, but oh my God, those Israelis are so pushy, Or oh my God, this happened, and they mahashmis. They really they make the people and the country sound so bad, right? Because everything is really fantastic in the United States. I got it. Thank you very much. I do. I'll thank you. You just need a hammer. So everything is so right. So they talk negative about Israel. And what you're doing is you're joining those, not you, but you're joining those 10 people in saying Israel's no good. It's a nice country, but I wouldn't want to live there. Thank you very much, Judy. And what was the cause? So there are many, many, many approaches as to what caused them to sin, to speak so badly. One is the one he's going to mention now. For those of you have never done Bagriyot, I assume, but when you do a Bagrut in Tanakh in Kita Yud Aleph, this one's in Yud Bet, sorry, Kita Yud Bet. This is a common Bagrut question. What was the cause? You have like 5 or 7 answers to this one. What was the cause of the Nisi'im to have sinned and spoken Lashon Hara about Eretz Yisrael? This is one of the classic answers. It tells us like this: Hu shegaram, it is it, meaning kavod, that caused lefidat chachamenu zichronim levarcha el meraglim. It's what kavod is what caused the meraglim sheotziu diba la'aretz. It caused them to speak lashon hara about the land. V'garmu mita lahem. It caused death for them. L'chol doram, and the entire generation miratam. What were they afraid of? What was the issue of kavod? They were afraid. They were going to the land of Israel. They knew things were about to change. They were going to go from a life of nisim, of miracles, to a life where you don't have nisim gluyim. You're going from life, you go out your door in a tent and you see your food in the morning. You go and you have the ananei hakavod protecting you. And of everything, you don't have to work for your parnasa. Everything's taken care of, to a world where everything's going to change, where it becomes you now need to plant a seed. You need to work the land. You need to do something for your food. You need to build a house. You need to do all these things. They knew that things were going to change. And now Moshe Rabbeinu potentially was going to become like the Melech was. He had the status of a Melech. And who knew what was going to happen to their station in life? They may have gone down a few notches. Miratam, from their fear, penima'at kivodam, that their level of kavod would go down as they entered the land. They would no longer necessarily be the leaders of Am Yisrael, and others would be in their place. This is one of the classic answers as to what caused their mind to fool them into seeing what they saw. You don't like that answer, Judy, correct? And I'll repeat what you said. Don't worry.
If we're assuming that these people who were put in charge of
Yes.
these different tribes were basically appointed on the ship, then we're saying God didn't do such a good job choosing who would be.
Okay, so Judy's bothered by this because yes.
And it's saying that the leaders of each tribe were at such a low level of emunah and of ability. They would think such.
Okay, so
what is the rest of
fine. So the two things that are bothering Judy right now. Number one, it would seem that because they were chosen by Hashem, that maybe Hashem didn't do quote such a good job in choosing these leaders. That's all they're concerned with is their honor. And the other thing is, what does it say about their emunah as well, right? That these were the supposed leaders. How was their emunah?
Also,
yes. What else?
If these are supposedly the best at something, otherwise they weren't the leader.
Right.
What does it say
About the rest? Oh, so if they were supposedly leaders, what does it say about the rest of Am Yisrael too? Yes.
I mean, I don't see why we have to just, why can't we just say they saw it as it was going to be? It's really hard. I mean,
right.
It's hard making Aliyah now.
Right. Why can't we say it's just hard? They didn't want to go because it's difficult life.
Not only of the post, maybe, but the people who
right.
be hard for them, call the homework for them,
right.
like regular Joe. Like
right. So Yochanan is saying that maybe it's also, maybe you're looking kind of at a positive spin, which is that they're saying that, look, it's going to be very difficult, not just for us, but for everybody else. Let's wait. Let's see what happens. And I don't accept that one. I'll tell you why I don't accept that. Because the Torah itself says, that they spoke Lashon Hara about the land. So one way or another, they did something wrong, and we were punished for it. You may have said that they may have had some good intentions, but what they say about good intent, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Oh, very good. I was waiting for that question. Yocheved asked, wait a minute, Lashon Hara refers to land? Don't you speak Lashon Hara against people? Okay, so that's a different discussion. I will, Bezrat Hashem, next when we finish this chapter, what's today or next week, I'll address that, but you got to remind me. Okay, it's coming back what Judy was asking, and Eric. Yes.
The fact that they had all this dependency, we have all this dependency on.
Yes.
So now we're sort of losing that connection.
Right.
Coming down a level, you get dependent on Hashem. Everything is so you're so connected. Everything now all of a sudden it's almost as if Hashem is, all right, you're on your own.
This okay. So what Eric is saying is about a factual change, that everything was going to change relative to their relationship with Hashem in a sense, and the reliance on Hashem. That's a massive change that they're going to go through. Again, a good question. What's the difference in their lives in Israel? What's the difference in the Midbar? How does it change? Remember that the Mishkan was central in the desert. They didn't have to go far to go to it. Now people were all over the country, and they had to make an effort to come down to Yerushalayim or to Nov or wherever it was going to be, and then eventually to the Beit HaMikdash. You're right, but I'm going to come back to this one. You have one more point. Why did who say what? Say which one? Which I'm not sure what you're saying. Why didn't the Raglan say?
Criticize. We can do this.
Right. Why didn't they say? That is one. Okay, so that's one of the reasons. It's another one of the potential reasons. What you said is the reason the spies did this. They did not want to have a life that didn't have Nisim Gluyin. They did not want to have, which again kind of goes back to Jesus. They kind of had a bit of a good intention in there, that they preferred this closer relationship with Hashem because they knew going into Israel meant a different kind of relationship. So all of you are right in what you're saying, both the positive and the negative. You're right, which is why there's so many different opinions as to what they did wrong. But I want to come back to what Judy said, okay? Because on the one hand, you're right, and on the other hand, no. That's the entire point that Ramchal is making. That in spite of the fact that Hashem chose it, in spite of the fact, and by the way, they had free choice, and despite the fact that they were the cream of the crop, and despite the fact they may have been on this very high level, Kavod still corrupted them. That's his whole point. That's his whole point here. Okay, it's easy to understand someone who is not such a hatzi-tatzi person, going after Kavod because he needs to build himself up. And it's also easy understood when people just, bow down to somebody all the time, that all of a sudden he's also going to. But at the same time, it's telling us here very clearly, that's this whole point of bringing this example, that in spite of their level they were at, They were still corrupted by. We see it, unfortunately, all the time when it comes to money, when it comes to sexual immorality. We see it all the time in the news, unfortunately, right? This one gets indicted. This one gets, oh my God, look, they're such the biggest tzaddikim, tzidkaniyot, and look how they did that. People are human. That's his point. Continuing. Oh, I guess Buddy had a point. Yes, Buddy. Buddy's the dog. Okay. Okay, so we also know the very first king of Israel was who? You're all going to give the wrong answer, by the way. The very first king of Israel was? No, I actually said it before. Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu had a status of a melech. He had a status of a melech. He was not called Moshe HaMelech. He was not. But he had the status of a melech. He also had a status of for 1 week of a status of a kohen. During the Shivat Yimei HaMiluim, when the Mishkan was being put up and taken down, he had the status of a kohen for 1 week. So he had a lot of statei. I don't know if that's how you would per se it, but status is statei. Okay. So he was okay, but let's put him aside. Shaul was the first king, and then we know that David becomes the first, takes over after that. Parenthetically, I asked this question when I began teaching Sefer Melachim many years ago. If Shaul is the first king and David is the second king, and then continues after that, how come Sefer Melachim doesn't begin with that? We should have a shorter Sefer Shmuel, and Shaul's a king, David's a king. Yet David, we begin Sefer Melachim with basically on the deathbed of David. Homework. Okay, so Shaul is the king, and David is his. He plays the lyre, L-Y-R-E, for him. Some say the harp, but if you go to your David, you know it's not a harp; it's a lyre. It's a picture of politicians. L-I-A-R. Never mind. Sorry, little poor humor. Dad joke. And Shaul is a wonderful individual, handpicked by God. Nachon? He was a wonderful individual at the beginning. Right, Nishichma v'lamala. He was like the tallest, he was handsome, he was commanding, he could get the people to do what's necessary. But he fell. And hard. What happened? He was a warrior, and David HaMelech was a warrior. David HaMelech goes out to war. And after the war, where he kills tens of thousands, it's the women are singing a song of praise. Hika Shaul be'alafav v'David b'rivavotav. That Shaul killed thousands and David killed tens of thousands. Look inside. What was it that caused Shaul to start to ambush or to go after David? It was only because of his kavod. It says, it says in Shmuel that the women responded. It was like I don't know what you call it, a refrain that would say over and over. And they would say, Hika Shaul, it says the Chulei, but Hika Shaul be'alafa v'David be'rivavotav. That Shaul killed thousands, but David killed tens of thousands. And what happened is immediately after they started saying that, Shaul oyenet David, that Shaul kept his eye on David, right? From that day forward, he kept his eye on David. He tried to kill him. The first time he tries to kill him, he throws a spear at David. David kind of is bent over, and it misses him. David says, oops, I guess that was a mistake, an accident. Hate when that happens. The second time, David says, got to get out of Dodge. And David is in a position 2 times to kill Shaul. The guy was coming after him. He had every right, al pi halacha, to kill him. Rodef and Nirdaf. He's being chased by someone who wants to kill him. And 2 times he doesn't. And he shows Shaul, I had this opportunity. And he said, Sadkami many, that you are more righteous than I am. Still, it was kavod that got the best of it. Mi garam lo liyoav la shiamit tamasa. I'm not going to get the whole story. Why did Yoav, chief of staff, kill Amasa? Ela kavod. Shamalo David im lo sar tzavati elefanai kol hayamim. Fine, wonderful. He gives us a number of cases where we see that in spite of the position these people held, and how wonderful they were, and how brilliant and how fantastic and big tzaddikim they may have been at some point, kavod destroyed them. I will tell you on a very personal level that before, and I still have this piece of paper, before I put my hat in the ring to become rabbi of the shul, that I ended up getting elected to, which is the same shul I grew up in, for those of you who don't know. I made a pros and con list, right? What would be the pro of becoming the rabbi? What would be the cons? The pro was the millions of dollars. Couldn't even say that with a straight face. No, there were some pros, definitely. And there were two cons that I had. One, that it could potentially take away a lot of time from my family. And number two, I have seen too many times that people in such positions let kavod go to their head and get destroyed by it. I've seen it with my own eyes. They think that they're God's gift to manhood. They think that they're the most important person in the room and no one's smarter than me and And I couldn't in a million years, I'd rather become a street sweeper than do something like that. So I made myself a promise. I wrote it down. I would always spend time with my kids as much as I could and my wife. We would eat, and part of that was to always try to eat supper together. And I would never let kavod to go to my head. And if it ever started to, I'm out. I wrote it down. I made myself two promises and I still have a piece of paper. So over the course of the years, when my kids were growing up, and while I was rabbi of the shul, I would ask them, not frequently, but every once in a while, am I spending enough time with you? The answer always was, too much. I helped with homework. It was very good. And Andy was phenomenal in helping to raise the kids. I was not around a lot of the time because, I was busy, but I still made time as much as I could. The kids to this day say, Baruch Hashem, I did spend the time with them. And I understand, let's see, how do I say this nicely? Whenever someone shows me respect, I'm not talking about just, like, how you doing? It's nice to see you. But, a kavod for a position. The only thing that goes to my head is I represent something. I represent Torah. I try to. As respect to the Torah, they're getting up, a rabbi, would you bench, whatever it might be, I understand it. And the only thing I'm allowing, this is very personal, I know, but it's not like I'm doing it private, it's gonna be on YouTube. But that's how I have to think, because I am no different than anybody else. Everyone's important. We're all b'nei and benot melech. We're all children of Hashem, or of the King. Doesn't make me more important, me less important. We're all equal. Just now, are there people who are on this unbelievable level and high top tier and all deserve? Of course, you have to give the respect to this individual. When people would it says specifically in the Gemara that that it talks about two different individuals. There was the one who would wait till everyone came in and then he would walk in, so everyone would have to stand up for him, right? He's basically demanding the respect. And the other would be the first one, so he could sit down, so that they wouldn't have to get up for him. He's already sitting there, right? So, but again, when someone does get up for that individual, they have to understand that yes, it's the person, but it's not the person. It's what they symbolize, right? So if someone once said about, I've only met him a couple of times, Herschel Schachter Shlita, like say he's a walking Sefer Torah. I've heard him speak once. If I told you the story, I was in New York or somewhere, I don't remember where, for a rabbi conference. I'd never heard him speak before. I knew of him, I didn't know him. I didn't go to YU, and it's in New York. Sorry, New Yorkers. And I'd never heard him speak. So there's one speaker after another, and he got up to speak. And I know what the topic still was because I've mentioned it before. I know, called the Choshen Mishpat, the forgotten chelik of Shulchan Aruch. And I have my notes, and I start writing down what he's saying. For those of you who know and have ever heard him speak even one time, you don't do that. You cannot write notes because it's like trying to catch bullets, and I mean that almost literally. In my notes, after about a half a page, I wrote, "Forget it." I just wrote down, "Forget it," because you cannot take notes. You can audio tape, you can listen, absorb. You cannot take notes. He's like, his mind just is going like crazy and very misudar. And I understood after that why people refer to him as a walking Sefer Torah. I understood why they referred to Rav Kanievsky Zatzal as Saro Shel Torah, like the Prince of Torah. I understand that, but do you think that Rav Kanievsky, let the kavod go to his head? I don't think so. I know so, because of people that speak about him after he passed away and some of the things you've heard about it. But on the other hand, we do know, unfortunately, whether, I don't mean to hashmitz anybody or any profession, whether it's a surgeon or the principal or the police chief or, a politician, you get full of yourself and you lose the sight of what it's all about. And what it's about, let's take a look. Klalo shel davar, the general rule is as follows. Hakavod hu adochek et halev adam yoter mikol hatshukot ha'chemdot shaba'olam. I don't know if I 100% agree with the statement, but this is his thesis. That more than any other internal drive one has, it is kavod that really is the one that's the strongest. Without it, without this need for kavod and drive, a person would subsist on whatever he could eat, whatever meager amount of clothing that he could cover himself with. He would just live in a house that was, just to keep him safe from the elements. And his parnasah would be simple. He wouldn't even have to make any effort to have any become richer. But because a person doesn't want to see themselves lower than their friend, they put themselves in such a position under this very heavy beam. There's no end to their efforts. Therefore, therefore the Chachamim tell us in Pirkei Avot, Hakin'ah, Ta'ava, Vehakavod, Motzi'in et Adam min olam, that jealousy, lust, and the seeking out of kavod take a person out of this world. When we mentioned and talked a couple of weeks ago about Kin'ah, I forgot to look up the source, because I said this in a speech a few years back, that not only do they motzi et adam min olam, not only do they take a person out of this world, but they malaveh him to the next. They stay with him in the next world. That it still causes, even though that if the person who ends up, God forbid, in Gehenna, that's part of it. It's that gnawing kin'ah, that gnawing sense of kavod is still there with them in the next world. V'ziranu, and we've been warned. Al tevakesh gedulav al tachmod kavod. Don't seek out greatness. Don't desire respect or honor, rather. I'm going to read one long sentence. How many people would rather fast than lower themselves to try to make a buck? It's something that's kind of a low-level job, so this way that they don't look, people don't look down at them. I'm going to sweep floors. Me? I'd rather get money from welfare. I'm going to be bus driver. Kidding me? Now, keep in mind, do you realize how critical that statement is nowadays? You mentioned Aliyah before. Some of the things that make, and I understand it, some of the things that prevent people from making Aliyah is that they may be the doctor in their community, they may be the therapist of the community, they may be the rabbi of the community, they may be the principal of the school, and they're going to come here, and they're going to be another person, no different than somebody else down the street, and they may end up being the kupai at Supercell. They may end up being the person who, he teaches English in the school, and back there he was, making multi-million dollars as a doctor in a hospital, and people don't necessarily want to lashpil themselves, to lower themselves, because, how many people do we know? Seriously, think about it, where they came from Ethiopia, United States, Russia, England, who are doing jobs today that they are over qualified for, because it's not, they're trained to be much greater. But what does it mean? Either they can't find something in their tchum, in their area, it's a possibility, or the other is, look, I need to reinvent myself, I need to do what I need to do, but at least I'm in Israel, right? That could be, or should be, at least the perspective. Not easy. I will not reveal numbers, but I just had a discussion with someone the other day about how much less I personally, my income is here versus the United States. I will not mention it's 80% less. I didn't say that. Okay, fine. It is what it is. Baruch Hashem, like they said, they're talking about a teacher strike. Instead of getting 3 shekels, they get 2 shekels. It's like, instead of 3, get 4. Wow. Right? Teachers don't make money here, right? I think teachers should make more money than the top surgeons in the United States, because they're ensuring the future of your children. But I'm biased. Is there anything more foolish than that, that you don't want to do something that's going to make you parnasah because you're going to look like, oh, he's only this? You know, what's interesting, and I mean it for real. There are people, you go to your average person in the United States who has no desire to make aliyah. That's fine. They love Israel. They send money to the federation. They don't make aliyah. And you say, what's your job? Oh, he's a plumber. He's a bus driver. Oh, he's an electrician, blue collar worker. I hear it a lot. But I look at it the exact opposite. It's so cool that a guy comes to fix my light in the house. I fix it myself. But some guy in theory comes to fix a light in my house, and he stops, makes a bracha on the water I give him, right? Oh, we got to go out and we have a wonderful garden. Well, not now during Shemitah necessary, but when they first years ago planted a new garden for us, planted the fruit trees, and they're excited. They took a break for lunch. What do? They sat outside learning Mishnayos together. I mean, I was in love with that. I loved it. These are guys that learn in Shivat Birkat Moshe. They're doing all. Oh, he's a gardener. That's for the Mexicans. Seriously, right? He's a waiter. The Puerto Ricans. I mean, we think about it. That's the perspective of so many people, and yet I love it. It's fantastic. Yes.
I find the difference of school and here is that in school,
Yes.
Tell me something about yourself. Oh, well, I'm an accountant.
Right.
I'm a doctor. Here. I'm married for X years and I have this number
Right.
of children.
Right.
You have to actually pry out of the
Yes.
person what they're.
Right. So Martin is talking about is actually, I'll explain what he said in a minute, is actually a shiur I heard one time, which I thought was fantastic. I'll tell you what in a second, is that it very often you'll hear in Chutzlaretz, and again, not to paint with broad strokes, but what do you do? And you'll hear, oh, I'm a doctor, I'm a lawyer, I'm an accountant. And here it's like, well, I'm married, I live in Ma'ale Adumim, I have a few kids. No, but what do you do? Right? So I heard the shiur from, I think it was Shir Smiles, that when people are asked, what do you do? He says, no one answers, well, I do chesed, I serve Hashem. No. Okay. Funny guy. What do you do? Well, that's what I do. Oh, you mean how do I make money? That's not what I do. I make money. That's not who I am. Who I am is Ana Abda de Kucha Brichu. I'm a servant of Hashem. I don't have it in this current siddur, but one of my older siddurim I have in the front cover. Ana Abda de Kucha Brichu. It's Aramaic for I am a servant of Hashem. And when we realize that we're in the Shiviti Hashem the Nagdi Tamid, I place Hashem before me at all times. And that's I'm not going to mention that pasuk, but he's going to talk about the idea soon. I'm kind of a spoiler alert here. How in the world can I feel the sense of look who I am if I recognize I'm in the presence of Hashem? Right? Imagine for a moment, I didn't, but imagine I got smicha from Rav Kanievsky. And people are coming to me and I'm getting my head all swelled up. Oh, they call me with questions all the time. This is so nice. And then in walks Rav Kanievsky, and I'm nobody. I'm a zero at that moment because it's all on Rav Kanievsky, right? So who am I going to think like? Well, this is my Rav. I mean, look at this. I mean, I'm absolutely. I used to say there's many people I say about it, even more so for him. And I've used the expression he'll forget in a day or in an hour what I won't know my entire life. And I know what I am and what I can do, and I know what my capacities are. But when I'm in his presence, Rav Kanievsky, if I could be. Again, I know who I am. I know my place. Al Chazkama v'chama, how much more so when I recognize I'm in the presence always of Hashem. Who am I to think about so great of myself? Oh, look who I am. Big Shah Rabbi. No, I'm in the presence of Hashem. That's what he's going to say if we get to it. Let's continue the paragraph. People would prefer to sit idly by, which brings about boredom. And it brings about doing things you shouldn't be doing. To bring you to all kinds of bad places. They prefer that rather than try to lower themselves in this way. But our rabbis of blessed memory have given us the proper path, taught us the right thing. Amru, they said, love work, usnat rabbanut, hate the rabbanut. It's not what it means, even though I will not say, but you don't need to seek out positions of leadership. We need leaders. Some people are natural born. Some people are born leaders. Some aspire to it and try. Furthermore, they said, whether you should flay a skin of an animal in the shuk, in the market, and don't say, don't say, I'm such a big shot, or I'm a Kohen, this is beneath me. And furthermore, they said, you should do something that's foreign to you, not avodah zara. Avodah shehi zara, do something that's foreign to you, that's not your actual area. And don't rely on people to give you tzedakah. There are certain people in our community, all the power to them. Guy comes to them for their handout, they offer him a job. No, I'm not going to work. Have you seen sometimes somebody's come to community with their handout, their mother is just passed away or whatever, and then they come back a year later and their mother just passed away again, and they have 3 kids and marrying them all 3 at the same time, and they're marrying those same 3 kids again a year later, 2 years later. A lot of scam artists out there. I've been asked many times, do you have to give someone who comes to their handout? So the answer is no, only on Purim. The only day of the year that you have to give to anyone whose hand is out is Purim. Any other time, you have a right to keep your money. You do. I think that vast majority of the people who have their hand out are shysters. The other part some are very legitimate, there's no question. And there's some who just prefer to not work. You work, or you go to the army and I'll sit. You know, you do. What's that?
Snoring.
Snoring is their job. Right. It's very lucrative. You kidding me? No taxes in many cases. Right. So they're also doing Averot Toch Kedei. It's great. It's a great gig. It's a cash business. Right. I'm going to reach that's a great question. You don't. Sometimes you do, because someone will actually present a legitimate letter that says that they have a legitimate situation, but you really don't always know. And therefore I can tell you that, for example, there are many cities, Chicago included, they established years ago something called the green card. It's still not bulletproof, but the concept is that in order to go around the city and to collect, people know you don't give to someone without a green card. You don't have a green card, you're as good as like you're just stealing from it. The green card meant you, before you even got to the city, you had to present certain credentials and letters of approbation and proof that your situation is the situation. And only then through the Aguda could you get this green card. It had a specific start date, a specific end date. And you can't use a photocopy, because what happens is, oh, I'm on my way, I just landed, I'm going to get my green card later today. Or I already turned my green card, here's the photocopy. No, only the original. That's the only thing that works, and it's still not guaranteed. But it's very much, and many cities have it. No, I'm saying we don't live in many of these cities, and we don't have a system like that in place here. I don't know, maybe some cities in Israel do, but in the United States, there are many of the most of the big cities have some kind of a system in place for that. Okay, and therefore, to answer your question is, you don't know. You're not losing out by giving someone money. You're not losing out. Although I definitely feel I've been taken many times, even though I gave. What are you going to do? But sometimes there's a gut feeling. The guys, I daven Mishkan Shoshan up the hill, right? And we get, once in a while, we get people, not a lot. Some places like shuls where it's like, there are more people snoring than there are people davening. But, you know, and you hear they give you the story. And it's sometimes so by rote, as if they're reading off a script and they just change it to fit the audience. I don't usually get to someone like that. But sometimes it's something that something's different. Something just really clicks here, or they're good salesmen. I don't know, but someone I will give and most I will not. Most of the time I will not, shako. Or the worst, and this I have actually done, is when you give someone, well, it's not enough. I take it back. I actually had I wrote a check to somebody years ago. I took it back, I tore it up. Then I was standing outside my house one time. This is before I was Rabbi Bishol. In Chicago, standing outside my house, and a guy came over to me, chutzpah, they're coming from New York or whatever city it was, to collect for their day school. I said, I'll tell you what, I'll make you a deal. And I was serious. I'll write a check right now, $100 for your day school. You write one to mine for $100. Why would I do that? Well, you're coming from out of town. You're not a towner. You're coming from out of town to ask me to support your school there when I am on scholarship in my school? Does that make any sense to you? He walked away from me. Yes. Yeah. There are, I will tell you like this. Let me end on a good note. While there are many disreputable individuals out there and people who will take anything they can from you, the vast majority of people are not like that. Most people are not ganavim. Most people are not out there to trick you and to steal from you. Most aren't. but there are some, so you got to be careful. So I'll pick it up next week. We'll finish the chapter next week. Bezrat Hashem. In the meantime, have a wonderful day. Enjoy this beautiful weather in the shade. It's going to get a lot hotter later. Have a great day.